Hi, everyone. It's Marcos Rivera, founder of Pricing IO and author of Street Pricing, and welcome to our best practices and tips in pricing. So today what we're going to do is break it down into two really big questions and then follow it up with an example of a real company. The first question we're going to tackle together is who should own pricing? I get this question quite a bit from a lot of different entrepreneurs, founders, and SaaS companies. And it really comes down to who is closest to value in your company? Who is driving the value that you're adding through your services, through your technology, your software, and so on? And who can be really cross-functional and work well with other groups, whether they're in sales, marketing, operations, product, who can be really cross-functional, who's data informed, meaning who has access to good information on usage, on customer behavior, on the market. And then who can be very customer centric or customer driven. And that's just really empathizing with the customer, understanding their needs and their pain points. What you want to avoid are folks that are more transactional in nature. They really don't believe in a relationship type transaction with the customer. Also, someone is overly sales led. Sales has a certain set of incentives that makes it really hard to own pricing. While they can drive the deal and those dynamics, they should not own the entire pricing function. Also, areas that are ad hoc or arbitrary or different roles that may come in and out or not have full access to all the information they need, typically not a great home for pricing. The second question that we really want to answer on building a pricing muscle in your operations is how should you own pricing? Meaning, what type of system do you put in place? And I use that word on purpose because you don't need a superhero to run around with their red cape to drive and solve all your pricing problems. You need a system that will outlive everyone. It becomes just a part of how you create and deliver value to the marketplace. When you're thinking about pricing teams and who should be represented on the team, these are the 6 most common roles. It could be different for you depending on your org structure, but these are the 6 that I typically see in most well-functioning pricing-driven teams. First is product management. And product management, again, being very close to the roadmap, the value they're driving. They also have a great finger on the pulse of the customers and the market, tend to be really great leads, and especially when it comes to companies that are trying to innovate very quickly. Service and support, also a very strong representative. They're usually getting the customer to feel the value, to get to value, as well as remove obstacles to that value around support. So service, professional services, onboarding, implementation, customer tech support, all really important. Customer success. They are trying to allow the customers to grow and gain value over time. Another major input into pricing. Sales anchoring there on the bottom, one of the most important stakeholders of all when it comes to pricing. They are going to be value selling. They're the ones that are overcoming objections and have a very important and strong seat at the table. Finance and operations, they are tracking the value over time. They're looking at margins, they're making sure you're hitting goals, and they're also making sure you're delivering that value efficiently and at scale across the organization. And then marketing. Marketing is going to help with framing and positioning and messaging that value into the marketplace and keeping that consistent with everything else. So you can see each of these 6 roles playing a very important part in the pricing equation. But what do they talk about in a pricing committee meeting or in a pricing council? This first agenda here is for 2 hours or 120 minutes. And I typically recommend meeting once a quarter for 2 hours your pricing committee and deep diving into your pricing strategy. Typically for B2B companies, maybe larger deal sizes, cycle times, maybe your sales cycle times could be anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. But ideally speaking, a quarterly cadence is a really nice rhythm to gather data, see what's going on, and make some good, clean decisions on your pricing. So if you're going to go with a quarterly cadence, the 2-hour agenda looks something like this. A pricing performance metrics, so capturing those key things, unit economics, how much money you're getting from expansion, how is LTV changing, things like that. And then you want to get into the voice of the customer. Now, this is where you're getting a lot of great information and feedback on your value to price. Where are the objections coming in? Why are you winning? Why are you losing? Anything change in satisfaction or NPS? What are customers telling you you're missing the value or maybe are providing a lot of it? Competition, especially things around where competitors are changing their pricing. Maybe they're copying you. Maybe they've raised their prices. Really a good deep dive on that topic in the meeting. Then you also have what's working, what's not working. Things like maybe you've introduced a new bundle. Maybe you introduced a new free trial or freemium. What is working, what is not, and how can we make some changes to that? And then lastly, some initiatives around value. And these are things like a future campaign on maybe you're raising prices, maybe you have some really exciting things on the roadmap, and you want to talk about how you want to monetize those in the future. But say, for instance, you are at a faster pace. Maybe you're focused on the smaller customer sizes. You're more product-led or PLG, and you have a lot of good data within a month. Maybe you want to meet monthly for 60 minutes instead of quarterly for 2 hours. Here's what an agenda looks like here. In this agenda, they're covering a lot of topics, but they're also making good ground and getting a good 360 view on their pricing. Starting with overall goals, updates from the team, a dashboard, a monetization health dashboard, just a very quick view on where things sit, any rollout updates on pricing or new packages that hit the streets, maybe a new bundle that you want to introduce, or focus on some new features that they want to roll into a plan, discussing some of those, any major updates to the roadmap that should be impacting the pricing and packaging, operational metrics that are also a signal for how efficiently you're delivering value, and at the end, a retrospective on what was released last or changes that were made most recently, and then open Q&A, and then close. It's a very, very efficiently run meeting. You could also use this as an option as well. But overall, I want to give you some tips to start meeting around pricing and doing it effectively. So first, hold a brainstorming session and decide the content and cadence that you want to cover. It's different for every company. I just gave you 2 examples. One, B2B, quarterly, 2 hours. One, maybe a bit more B2C, monthly for 1 hour. But choose what fits for you. Then, when you design it, make sure that you start with basic data. If you go quarterly, if you go monthly, whatever you decide to do, make sure you decide with something that's basic and available that you can build up from. So you don't need to aim for perfection out the gate. You want to make sure that you start with the right people, the right content, and the right cadence. So what I always recommend is once you start with some basic data, also take a short survey. It could be a very simple 5-minute, what was your impression of the meeting? Did you need to be there? Did we cover the right content? How can we improve? Very simple 3, maybe 4 questions, and just work out the kinks in those first 2 or 3 meetings before you can then have a nice, smooth rhythm. And then at the end, store everything in a centralized tool, notes, actions. You want to keep the visibility very high. And that's going to keep a very high value to the meeting, high quality, and that's going to drive a lot of great changes in your monetization behavior and build that pricing muscle up. Let's move on to a real example of pricing operations at work. Here is their overall charter and goal for their pricing committee. They had 3 main objectives: keep all stakeholders informed, know and understand the direction of the pricing model and where they want to monetize, open forum for discussions, maybe work out any conflicts in priorities or problems, and then the overall health of their pricing model and monetization efforts. And you'll see there, they even listed a schedule for the year. They pre-scheduled all the meetings, and they had a really well-structured, well-defined cadence on how they approach monetizing their value. They start with planning to design. They have a council meeting in between. They finish up the design, they validate and test, and then they release, and then they do that cycle over again. Very healthy organization and fantastic at capturing their value. The next example I want to show you is a list of their committee goals. So these are some of the outcomes of the pricing committee meeting. This is an example of some of the goals and initiatives they were driving, the owners, and actions. I obviously masked the data a little bit, but you can see just examples of some of the things you're doing and running and driving in these pricing committee meetings. You are not doing things like rehashing transactions or deals or just deep diving into one topic like discounting. This is a strategic session that is designed to drive your monetization forward as a group. One more example running a retrospective. So this is how they ran their retros, in that they first focused on what did we change in this pricing release. In this case, they added an integration to one plan, they increased the price of another plan, and so on. What did we do well? Listing those bullets very cleanly. What did we do poorly? Being very candid and objective around that. What can we improve? And this is where, again, the power of the team and the cross-functional nature really comes into play. And then lastly, what proposed next steps? Notice they don't have a lot of proposed next steps. They distilled it down to just one or two things that are really going to move the needle with a named owner of that initiative. Very important to make sure things get done. So to wrap up here, making sure that you have all the right components and tools to start your own pricing muscle, what should you do next? Start small, but start somewhere. All right, create a home base. Maybe it's some centralized site that everyone can start sharing some data, grab some information, whether it's product usage, a customer interview, win-loss, and hold that first pricing committee and start capturing your value. Thank you for watching the video. I hope the content was helpful. If you liked it, please let us know at pricingio.com or reach out to us on LinkedIn.